Welcome, members of the Online Vault and Inner Circle, photographers from all over the world. We're excited to come to you with a brand new video today. This one happening to be all on photographic techniques. Hello, gentlemen. How excited are you to talk about photography?
Right on.
Yeah.
Great stuff today. Great stuff.
It is important stuff. I know we spend an awful lot of time, rightfully so, talking about the business side here on the Online Vault. But equally important sometimes is talking about the quality of your work. And we want to give you both sides here. We want to improve your business. We want to improve the quality of your work and especially improve the fact that it is appealing to your target market. It always comes down to that. Today we are specifically talking about facial analysis. Now this is literally can be the 1-minute magic step that separates nearly all professional portraits from amateur portraits. Now, Tom, you and I kind of discussed this months ago, and you had said, Todd, I would love to talk facial analysis. You practically reached through the screen, grabbed me, and said, Todd, let me talk about facial analysis. And so we're doing that today. What was it that made you really feel this was an important aspect to talk about to photographers?
You know, this becomes such a part of your nature if you do this properly. I'll be out to eat, and I look at my friends' faces and think, how would I photograph this person? I don't say it out loud, but it becomes so innate that you'll find that you just have to do it because you're thinking about the things we're going to talk about today. And I guess I just had been out with some friends, and somebody said, hey, how would you photograph me? And it sort of started that conversation. I thought, what a great subject, because it is something I do with every photography session, bar none. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Excellent. I love that. That's so important. Now, first, before we dive in, and then, Dad, I want to hear from you about why you feel facial analysis is so important as well. But before we do that, you should always be asking yourself, why should you listen to us? Well, it becomes obvious why you should be listening to these two guys down here, because they've been professional photographers for decades. I mean, between the two of you, you have about 80 plus years of photography experience. I mean, that is quite a font of knowledge between the two of you. Me, I'm not going to be talking a lot on this one. I'm going to be listening and absorbing and learning just like the rest of you. I know a good amount about what we're talking about today, but not nearly as much as these two experts. So they're going to be doing the majority of the talking. But that's why we're excited to come to you about this subject. Listening to the two of them is very important because it's really hard to find people that have multiple decades of experience, that have worked in film and then in digital and realizes the similarities and the differences and have analyzed thousands upon thousands of faces, which both of our fellow photographers here have done today. And again, like I said earlier, everything that we do, first and foremost, must appeal to your target market. If it doesn't appeal to your target market, then why are you bothering to do it? Other than if you just want to do it as a hobby and you just want to do it for creative inspiration for yourself, that's a whole different thing. But as a business, you have to always be thinking about how to appeal to your target market. All right, we have so much to cover. We're not going to dilly-dally. We're going to dive right in here. But first, Dad, what is it from you? First of all, if you could kind of tell us what facial analysis is, and then why you feel personally it's so important to your photographic techniques.
Well, you really have two choices. Choice number one is to do what I call just don't think about it. Just take all these different images, all these different views of the face, all this stuff, kind of like potluck, you know. Everybody brings a dish and lays it out on the table and you kind of go, and I knew right away at the beginning I didn't want to do that. So the other choice is to look at my subjects and analyze their faces and determine what's the best view, the best light, and concentrate on that. I don't exclusively do it, but I always analyze the face and then I pick what I feel is best. But then once in a while, I'll just, try something different, but it usually doesn't work very well at all. So facial analysis means that you sit your client down before you photograph. Let's say her, we'll just say her to save time. Sit her down, and before you photograph her, you look at her under very specific lighting. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And you just have her turn her head to the right and to the left And smile and be serious, and we'll walk you through the whole thing here.
Yeah, we'll walk you through the whole thing. So the overview of what facial analysis is in order for you to take a great photograph of someone, you've got to know what you're working with first. It would be like somebody taking a lump of clay, plopping it down in front of themselves and start sculpting without having in mind kind of what they're working with first, even as an idea. So the more you can understand and analyze about that person's face before you get started, the better off you're going to be. So that's why facial analysis is so important. All right, so next up here, Tom, let's go talk about why is facial analysis so vital specifically for professional portraits versus somebody that's just taking snapshots, quote unquote, with their smartphone.
Well, we've all met with clients that said, I have a good side, I have a bad side, I hate being photographed because it never comes out good. There's a reason for that. There's usually a best angle, a best lighting, a best pose that really flatters and enhances that person's appearance. And, we've all seen where we look in the mirror, maybe when we're shaving or whatever, like, gee, I look really good. Then you see a photograph, you're like, oh, guess I don't look so hot today. It's because it was the wrong angle, the wrong lighting, the wrong moment, the wrong expression, whatever. So facial analysis, it takes us into consistency. People come to us expecting us to know what we're doing. They don't know about facial analysis necessarily, but their friends were photographed, they look great. And for us to consistently do that day by day and not do, as Chuck said, potluck, hope I got one, the monkey at the typewriter typing a novel eventually if they type for a million years. We want to be able to consistently, in a timely fashion, produce great portraits of people, and we want to enhance their face, minimize the things they don't like, which we're going to talk about today. And so I could not photograph someone without doing this and at least get great results every single time.
Yeah, and this is important, all right, because nobody does this. All right. Have you ever had a photograph taken of yourself that somebody analyzed? No, you haven't. Nobody does this. Only someone who really, really is serious about creating a nice photograph of you would take the time and the effort to do what we're about to talk about. So the minute you do this sells you so powerfully, because they go, holy smokes, nobody's ever done this before. Man, this guy or gal really knows what he or she is doing. My goodness, starts everything off on the right track.
It sure does. So now let's start with kind of going over all of the key points. So the rest of this video is all going to be about the process of facial analysis, the overview of it, and then looking at actual photographs and talking through that process as well. So gentlemen, we'll kind of take it one screen at a time here. We'll show some images in between where you can talk about the specific things that we have talked about on the screen here on each of those images. So I'll turn it over to the two of you for this first section.
Well, I'll just start off, Tom, if you don't mind, with saying that this first step, greet the client, make sure they feel comfortable, is rather important. Okay, and because you want them, most people don't feel comfortable in front of a camera. So in order to have that happen, you've got to have small talk, we'll mention that in a minute, or some good people skills to where you can relax them and help them start to feel comfortable so that you don't have to work 15 or 20 minutes with terrible expressions and terrible everything before she finally starts to relax and finally starts to realize you actually know what you're doing and, have fun. We should start out that way. So you just have a good personality and you're funny, but you're natural. That's very crucial in photography, both in the greeting when they first come in to chat with you in the design consultation and on the telephone when you chat with them too. But then on the day of the session, you want to be excited. You want to let them know you love what you do, by the way you're acting. Very important.
Another important thing is, as you're doing this, don't rush. You're not in a hurry. If you are doing the proper number of photography sessions during a week, you don't have to hurry because you don't have 19 of them lined up that day where you're like, turn your head, do that. So, and Chuck had mentioned the design consultation. A lot of times people will express verbally, some don't, their challenges and fears. I don't like this about my face. And so we make note of that, of course, and then that's brought in our heads, at least, into the photography session and into the analysis. But you can't do it in split second. Usually it doesn't take that long. and we don't make a big deal out of it. We'll talk a little more about the method here in a moment, but don't hurry through it. You're not in a hurry. If you've allowed the proper amount of time, you could do a good job, because it is important you take note mentally of what things that you'd like to see perhaps corrected, and we'll talk how to do that.
Right on. And Tom and I very rarely look at things differently. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, we've been working together, holy smokes, I don't know how long, Tom, but it's been a long time. And we really agree on 99% of everything, the business end of it, all of this stuff. But on this one, there's just a couple of little minor differences, and I want to just mention them so that you can decide what you'd prefer to do. So, Tom, why don't you start out with the next point, the posing stool, and leave the lights on?
Yeah, so the important part of the kind of the before, when you're analyzing their face, is you don't want anything altering or correcting it before you're ready to start doing photography. So we're not using studio lighting per se, although it may be studio lights that are on, but it's room lights. It's basically done so that the lighting on the face is flat, and the posing stool has something to do with that. That's if they're going to be seated, then I will have them seated. If they're going to stand, then I'll have them stand if it's going to be a standing pose, so that I can see from the angles I'm at where I should correct and what I should do. So that's the posing stool is kind of where I start, and as I had mentioned, the lighting we kind of leave flat. So Chuck, I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks. What I do is I'm very focused on what I want to do. So I bring her in, I sit her down on the posing stool. I have a little Tony table that I sit next to her, and I put her arm up on the Tony, just so there's something there. It's some kind of a security blanket, if you will, because you know she's nervous, okay? And so we got to be aware of that. And then I turn all the house lights off, and I have the main light right where the camera is, well, just above where the camera is going to be. Cameras, I move the camera out of the way, okay? It's gone. And then I have my key light, you know, so it comes down on her face approximately at a 45-degree angle, but no higher than that, maybe even a little lower. Flat light, like what Tom said, right from where the camera is going to be. Now I get right underneath that light, and I'm laughing and chuckling and talking and stuff the whole time. And that's when I start with having her turn her head to the right and the left, and I always motion with my hand because people get mixed up when they're a little nervous. But that's one little difference. I turn all the house lights off. I have one light so that I can see exactly the flat light, not in no effect from any house lights that are on or anything.
Sure. So two slightly different philosophies on how to do that, but both for the same reason, which is interesting. It's we don't want to be looking at studio lighting yet. We don't want that. We want to see what does the face look like flatly lit, whether you're doing it with the studio, you know, the house lights, as my dad called them. Great theater term, by the way, the house lights, or the actual just putting a studio light right in front of them, which we would never light a client that way. Of course not. But this is the way you can really analyze the face properly. Now, the next point here is don't tell the subject what you're doing. Now, this is so important. And Dad, you do this a little differently as well. So, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you first, and then Dad, tell Tom why he's wrong.
Oh, that's going to be tough. How am I going to tell him he's wrong?
Not again. Oh, no. Yeah, I'm here to learn too, folks. I always do. The idea for me is that we don't want to make people nervous or overly self-conscious. So if you sit them down and you say, all right, I'm going to study your face now and see what's going on here, they're going to feel like, oh, man, no, don't look so closely. So as we're talking and chatting and having great rapport building, and I'm asking them questions, and like Chuck said, we just have a good demeanor going on, but it's lighthearted. They're nervous, but the nerves start to dissipate a little. So basically, I don't say exactly what I'm doing. I don't say, I'm going to look at your nose here. I'm going to look at your ears. We basically talk, but I do have them turn their head in different directions so that I can see exactly what we're working with. Once in a while, someone will say, unscripted and self-prompted, oh, I wanted to mention this. Maybe they didn't mention. So it's also a time once in a while where we get a little bit of prompting from the client themselves. But other than that, I just don't want to make them feel self-conscious by telling them exactly what I'm doing at that point.
Yeah, that's fascinating because Tom has really got these great people skills and tremendous sense of humor very quickly. I could throw a word at him right now and he'd come up with something funny. I've always compared him to Johnny Carson, for those of you who are old enough to remember Johnny Carson. He's that quick. Yeah, I mean, Tom is that quick. So I'm not. Okay, I'm focused, but no. So what I do is I've got the light there, and I say, so I lean down underneath the light. I say, now I just want to take a look here and kind of see what we got. If you turn your head a little to your right, yeah, oh, that's great. And eyes right here, and I hold my hand up. So where I want her looking, which is 99% of the time, the eyes follow the nose. So I hold my hand there wherever that's going to be. And I said, oh, that's great. And look now, a little smiley. Yeah, that's great. You look fantastic. I love your hair. That's really, really nice. Now I'll kind of steer it. Yep. Now let's turn your head to your left. So I focus, I motion to her left, not to my left, right? And she turns her head. And that's kind of what I do. But I agree 100% with what Tom said about I don't say, oh, wow, I noticed the spot on your nose, or I noticed that you have this funny chin thing. I don't think I've ever done that. They know I'm looking at them like nobody else has ever really looked at them, right? Except their partner in life, maybe, close up and snuggling and hugging, and then they look. But no, I'm really studying them so that I can see exactly what I'm working with and what angles are better, leaving the light right where it is. So we're really not that different, Tom. Not really.
Really not that different. And the important thing is you never want to call attention to something that might make somebody self-conscious when you're getting ready to take portraits of them. Right. They're already self-conscious enough. So the more comfortable we can make them. And one thing that I just thought of, gentlemen, I just thought of this as you were saying this, because I'm always thinking, well, now how could I put my little spin on this? I could even see, if I were doing that myself, the way you do it, Dad, with the light, and then peeking under the light, kind of a thing. And I could even see saying, before we start, one of the things I love to do is I like to become the camera first. I want to become the camera. So I'm just going to look at you as if I'm the camera here, and we're just, and just, again, playing up kind of just the fun that you're having, the lightness of it, becoming the camera. And that sounds artistic too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The more you can become the camera, the more, so I kind of like that idea. But again, don't comment on what you're seeing. Make small talk, conversation, keep them light, and remember, you're building that relationship to make sure that they have a good time, because the best way you can do facial analysis is to make sure that they look comfortable first, because all the facial analysis in the world, if they look uncomfortable, isn't going to do you anything. All right, a few more key points here, and then we will start looking at some actual images as well.
One other thing is that I do comment, and how I comment is, and so I see, I'll turn your head a little bit to your right. Yeah, and eyes right here. Oh, wow, that looks fantastic. I'm always positive. Okay.
Yep.
I'm always, oh, that's great. Oh, I love that. Now stay like you are, but bring your eyes back to the camera, which is me. Oh man, I love that. Oh, so I'm positive all the time. I don't go,
yeah. You don't want them to know you're analyzing them. they don't want to feel analyzed. That feels analyzed. I feel like I'm with my therapist,
Yes.
It's like, oh boy. Oh boy.
What are we going to do with that?
Have you ever been to the dentist? The dentist looks in your mouth and goes, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. No. Terrible.
So you don't want to do facial analysis and say, I don't know if I can work with you. This isn't good. No, you don't want that. We want positivity.
Absolutely. Yep. And now on that same thing of them not feeling analyzed, you want to be doing this without it feeling obvious. The last thing you want to be doing is taking notes, right, gentlemen?
Yep. No notes. It's all up here. You're looking at them and you're just smiling and you're chatting and you're commenting on how nice she looks. No, I love that necklace. Everything, that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. Tom is a little quicker and funnier than I am, so I'm sure he has some great funny things that he says that helps them relax even more.
Yeah, and they are very non-related to what I'm doing there. We just talk lightly about things that got them there. Yeah, any conversational. I'm not really telling jokes. My monologue is earlier, but the conversation is just light enough. It's almost like the magician does a little bit of misdirection patter, they call it, where they're talking and they want you to look at this hand when actually this hand is the one that's doing the magic stuff. So I just really do it and keep it light and it's not a long process, but it's one that's again, as we're going to talk about here, very vital.
Yep, and it's these only. I mean, you can do this in a minute. All right, 60 seconds. It's not a big deal. We don't make it sound like a big deal. But she knows, and if mom's in there, well, let's say it's a high school senior and mom's in there, because I always have mom in there, mom knows, she notices. She goes, whoa, this dude, I've never seen anybody do this before. This guy really knows what he's doing. And you're selling yourself, and that's the beginning process to having a successful finishing sale, if you will.
Chuck, this next point is vital because we talk about, I think it was the great Donald Jack that said ESP, expression sells the portraits, correct?
That's right.
I mean, smiling and non-smiling, most of the parents of anybody I've ever photographed, even if the person was 65 years old and they had their 85-year-old parent in the portrait, they're like, you better smile. So people equate a good, successful portrait with at least a pleasant expression that is real to that person, smiling or not. And of course, we do a little bit of both so that they have a choice. But by asking the person to smile and then do relaxed or pleasant but non-smiling or smile with your eyes, people ask different things to get those two. What it does is it lets you know, do they have a crooked smile? Are they shy about smiling? Maybe they don't want to smile. I have friends that I photographed before that are like, I don't like my teeth or whatever. So you got to find out kind of where they're at with that smile. Is it going to be a big, broad smile with lots of gums, or how are you going to control that? And that's what happens later on in the corrective part. But seeing that smile is really important. Sometimes just conversationally, it'll come up anyway. You don't even have to ask them to do it. But if it doesn't, we do a little prompting.
There you go. Yeah. Smiling and non-smiling, because you're going to be doing both during that portrait session. You want to know how is the lighting, the posing, the angle of the face, the choice of lens. How are those things going to change based on how a person looks differently when they smile than when they're not smiling?
And both directions too, both angles.
Yeah, because most people have a good side and a bad side, don't they? I mean, they may feel that more than we do as people that don't live with our faces every day. Right. But most people have one side that might be just a little bit better to photograph. Some photos that may be the side that we're going to favor the most when we're doing close-up photography. And this, again, like my dad said, shouldn't take more than a minute or so, and then you begin the portrait session as usual. So that's the kind of overview of these principles. Now we're going to start taking a deep dive in and looking at some specifics of this process by showing some images as well. So what to be looking for as you look at the face. So let's dive into that first, gentlemen.
Right on. Tom, you want to start with this?
Sure. My mental checklist begins normally with the eyes, because as trite as it sounds, it's always been true. The eyes are the window to the soul. Most portraits, the eyes and how they look are crucial to the success of the portrait. And obviously that they're nice and open and all that good stuff. But the person, are they a blinker? Are their eyes, maybe everybody has asymmetrical eyes? Is there one larger than the other? Because ideally we're trying to equalize that, because a beautiful face to the human mind is symmetrical. And so beauty sometimes comes from, unless you're trying to play that up and create a character portrait, the pirate thing with the big eye. So we're looking to see if they blink, a large eye, or if their eyes don't line up. There's a certain point where people turn their heads and the eyes both follow the nose, and other positions where they're a little off from that, and that could be off-putting in a still portrait. So I do start with the eyes, and are they symmetrical? Chuck?
Right on. And the key to this whole thing is that you want to work with people who this is important to them. That's your target market, right? They value photography. They want to look a little better than they really look in real life, but not all, touched up and stuff, but they want to look better than they really look. And it's important enough. That's our target market, not people that say, oh, I don't even care, just do whatever you want. Nah, that's not who we want to work with. So this all leads up, everything we're talking about here leads up to creating images that are going to help them look the best they have ever looked in their life in a photograph. And that's where you get into, when you present the images, they just go crazy. They just love them. So the next thing is, usually what I do next is the hair. But what Tom does is the eye, or the ears. So we do the eyes for sure, because that's such an important thing. And then we talk about the ears. And I don't talk to them about it at all. If they bring it up, see, the key to this thing is we meet them ahead of time on a different day. That's the key. You never photograph somebody without having met her in advance on a different day. So when she's there and we're talking, she might have brought something up, that I have one ear that's bigger than the other, and it bugs me, and my friends at school, kid me, and can you hide that? That's fine. But I never ask them.
Right, and you want to look at the ears no matter what, because they may not be as aware of it, because when they're looking at themselves, they're typically looking at themselves in a mirror straight on, or they're maybe looking as they're taking a selfie. They may not notice where, oh, when you took that photograph, for some reason my ear looks really gigantic. So you want to take a look at that and make your own points there as well. Tom, anything you want to add to that quickly before the next point?
Yeah, no, and again, these aren't really in a specific order. The hair also is important. We'll get to that. But here's an example of, as we're turning the head different ways. You can see this is very common. I'm not picking on this young man, handsome young man, but one eye's, and his mom actually mentioned this to me. She says, in some photographs, his eyes are a little off. I don't know if you can do anything about that. And I didn't say anything to him. I just told, this was at the design consultation. I said, absolutely, we'll take care of that. No problem. And so as I repositioned his head in different spots, his eyes began to line up, and you can sort of see that happening as it goes, as you turn their head to right and left during the analysis phase. There is going to always be at some angle where they line up perfectly. It just always works out that way. So you're going to, perhaps, as Chuck mentioned earlier, do other poses. Might do a profile where only one eye shows at all, but you're going to find one. Usually it's a 2/3 view in one direction or the other, where the eyes line up eventually, which is good because that's really a good view of the face. And
yeah, remembering that whatever's closest to the camera is going to look larger. So if one eye is a little bit smaller, then photograph with that eye a little bit closer to the camera, and it starts to even things out. Yeah,
right.
Perspective so important. Let's take a look at another image here from the eyes standpoint.
All right. Same thought, and then I'll throw it off to Chuck. This young lady at one angle, the eyes don't line up quite as well as they do at the other angle. And I actually photographed this girl and her brothers and sisters since they were babies. And this is her this year, actually. She's becoming a high school senior in the fall, so this was rather timely. But and so I had analyzed her little face probably for 15 times over the years that they did family groups. I want to mention here, too, that this is easier to do, obviously, and to make corrections with an individual. If you get a family group of 10, you can still position people so that you're doing some corrective posing and positioning, but then your lighting is going to be the same, obviously, for all of those people in that group. So you could do this on individuals and couples. Once you get into 3, 4, 5 people, it becomes a little more of a challenge because you can't quite do all the corrections, but it still is important to do, and I still do it that way.
Yeah, I only do facial analysis with singles, okay, with a high school senior, a younger child, but not very young,
Yep.
But that's it for me.
Yep.
Everything else I do it as I'm doing the photographs, but for singles, wow, that really makes a big difference.
All right, let's take a look at this one here. This one's from the ears standpoint.
Go ahead, Tom.
This is pretty much the key light or the main light kind of over his head, as you can see from the shadow under his nose on the portrait on the left. And his mom and he came in for the design consultation, and she did say in his stead, because, teenagers, this is another high school senior, he's kind of shy about, just go ahead and have him done. I'm doing this for my mom anyway, although in the end he loved him. But she said, well, sometimes he got his hair cut short. That's the fashion now. It used to be longer hair covering the ears. So he feels like his ears look a little big, and I said, that's no problem at all. And so with the 2/3 view, you make an ear disappear. And it really changed, and of course with short lighting there, so we're lighting that side of his face and putting the rest of it in shadow, it really can minimize if you don't have hair. Now with girls with longer hair, it's a lot easier sometimes to fix that because you just cover the ears obviously with their hair as they normally wear it. But with someone like that, we were just looking at turning that head to that 2/3 view or a profile, and that really makes the correction complete.
Yep. All right. And that Tom mentioned the 2/3 view of the face. And to me, what that means is that they turn their head a little bit to the right or the left until we don't see the back ear, but we still see a little bit of skin from the faraway eye. And that's about a 2/3. And then if you really want to do a smash up top, have them looking back towards the camera. So their head is turned like this, and then their eyes come back like this. And then I have them look just above the lens. Just above. I put my hand right above the camera on a tripod, right? And they just sparkle. The eyes look fantastic. It's beautiful. Which brings us to the hair, which to me is a really important part of this thing. The hair is so critical because it helps you decide which side you want to photograph her from, if you can. If all other things work out, I want the least amount of shadow from her hair, and I want her hair to look absolutely gorgeous. So I'm doing it both ways, left and right, with my flat lighting ahead of time, and we're looking at it very carefully to determine what I think the lighting is going to do. That's a huge part. One of the rules of thumbs you hear sometimes is photograph into the part of her hair. I don't usually pay much attention to that. I look at the shadows. I look at to see where the hair is going, the shadows from the hair, and which direction looks best for everything else. Tom?
Yeah, and just a little adding on to that, often you'll see the hair causes a shadow in the eye socket if it's hanging over that eye. So you have to clear that away a little bit, and also seeing if they have frizzies and flyaways and things that can be corrected in camera, so there's a lot less photoshopping that you have to do later on for stray hairs, flyaway hairs. One other thing I always ask during the session, are there any major hair changes? This is just a little tip. Whatever is the most intrusive, if they're going to change the hair from that long straight hair to a ponytail or put it up in a bun or something, save that, because then having to take it down and put it back where it was when they first came in is time consuming, and they don't always get it back to where they want. So that's important to look at the hair for that reason. And we're talking about smiling, have them smiling and non-smiling. That interacts so much with the shape of the face and also with their nervousness. Is it a half smile? I do encourage, as another little tip, if the parent is in the room with a high school senior or a child, I instruct them gently, you can help me, but don't comment on their expression. If they have an expression that you see truly as forced, don't say, that was a terrible smile, because you'll see them slump over and suddenly get real depressed because my mom just said my smile was terrible. Or don't tell them to say something or say cheese. We don't get expressions that way, at least if you're truly looking for genuine expression. So when you're doing that analysis, even if they don't have what you think is a great smile during that analysis, make sure that someone's not looking over your shoulder going, now that wasn't very good, because that really will impede your progress in getting a great expression.
Yep, same thing for me, Tom. I always have Mom in the camera room, and she's sitting over to the side, and I kind of consider her my art director, and she can help with the hair sometimes and stuff as I nitpick. And of course, my wife Sherry, portrait consultant, is in there as well, and she does most of the picking for me. But we're very sensitive and conscious of girls' nervousness, and guys, really, in front of a camera. They just feel so nervous. So, you've got to be real respectful of that. So the key here is that we're looking for the combination of all these things we're talking about that is going to look the best.
Right.
We're trying to balance everything, and Tom is extraordinarily good at
Yeah,
this.
so let's keep our eye on the time, gentlemen. We got quite a bit more to cover here. Determine the best way to thin the face and take off weight. Which of you would like to start on that one?
Well, we're both going to say the same thing. We're looking at the face, of course, for angle and stuff, but then we're going to use narrow lighting where the key light comes and lights the side of the face that is away from the camera. And the side of the face that is towards the camera is in slight shadow. And we can show you this on a couple coming up photographs here. What that does is we know that the highlighted areas tend to move forward and the shadow areas tend to move back as you view a piece of art. So what we're doing is we're having the far side come forward and the close side go back, and that thins the face. Very, very nice.
In rare examples, in today's society particularly, I don't get it as much, some might have a really slim face. And that's where we use a different kind of lighting.
Correct.
Because what we're looking for, it goes way back to geometry, that an oval is the ideal face shape. If you go to a hairstylist and you have longer hair, they try to shape your face with the proper hairstyle that gives you an oval. It's just genetically, I guess, DNA more pleasing to the human eye, more symmetrical to see that oval. So we may or may not even realize what we're doing, but intrinsically using lighting and posing and all the other angles and so forth, trying to get that oval, and that lighting can do that. Now, the next thing up is, and can add or take off weight, is the teeth. People are very reticent sometimes because they don't like their teeth. They didn't have braces. They may be missing something. In high school seniors, it's more if they needed braces and they didn't get them. Or some people are just shy, or they've been told, you don't smile very good. I've had people actually say that, negative things told. I'm told I don't have a very good smile, so I prefer not to smile, Mr. Morelli. They've actually told me. But with my supreme personality and sense of humor, they're smiling but they're smiling for real. And I'm not talking laughing, because there is that fine line. I call it the bell curve of the smile, where the smile starts and it's perfect. It gets too big, goes back down. Oh, right there's another sweet spot. So usually within a smiling situation, if I can catch them, there's a couple opportunities to get something that's not forced, that's genuine and looks good. And one point that's really important, of course, Chuck beat this into my head years ago. I have learned so much from him about photography as well as marketing, is don't comment. If somebody doesn't have a good expression, don't say, oh, that wasn't very good, let me do another one. Just get, oh, you're doing fantastic. Oh, that is so great. Keep going. And just keep going until you got what you think you wanted. You know, we had to do that in the film days. We had to wait a week before we knew what we had. So we had to make darn sure every photograph counted, every image we took. We couldn't just take 100 and hope one came out. So we took the time to make sure that the expression was proper and believable to the parents who usually were investing in the portraits in the first place.
Right on. And then, of course, the teeth. We're looking, when they're smiling, we're looking at the teeth to see if there's one side, one view that looks better than the other side. Is there one crooked teeth or a tooth that's a little misplaced a little or something, crack in the teeth, you know, anything like that? Because we're trying to do as much as we can on camera and in camera, not afterwards. And then, of course, the glasses. You want to talk about the glasses?
Sure. By the way, earlier you did a 2/3 pose, Chuck, and I wish I had my camera. That was the best image I've seen of you. You look back with those eyes, I was like, oh, man, where's my screenshot? Anyway, do they wear glasses? And, you know, I learned this from Chuck years ago. I actually have a pair on of what I call Hollywood glasses. I've been experimenting with different glasses lately. These are my intelligent guy glasses, my wife calls them, even though, you know, she knows better. But do they have glare? You know, that's a big challenge. Some glasses now are coated with anti-glare or glare rejection coating, but you still will get maybe spots, glare, reflections, things like that. So we have to deal with that, because we want to be able to see their eyes perfectly through the glasses. But if they normally wear glasses, you know, we want to make sure that they, you know, have them on so they look themselves. So there's a couple ways to deal with that. One is, if their optometrist will loan them an identical pair without glass in them or with just regular glass in them, that works out great because they still look like themselves. A few cases that they can't do that, I take an exposure in exactly the same spot with no glasses on, looking in the same direction. And honestly, it takes me 5 minutes to fix glass glare by just plugging those other eyes in. But if you can get the Hollywood glasses with no glass in them, that's the ideal. It's much easier to do. So always ask first, who's your optometrist? Let's borrow a pair for an hour, and I'll run them back for you if I have to.
I do the same thing, call them Hollywood glasses.
Yep, that's where I learned it.
Yep, right on.
All right, a lot of people have concerns about different features on their face, and some people say, oh, my nose is you know, kind of long or whatever, and there are corrective measures. You know, I call them optical or posing. There's a lot of different ways to correct things, but one is the angle of the camera. You know, if you photograph a little lower with someone that has a longer nose, or their perception is they have a longer nose, and with a longer lens, it foreshortens the nose a bit so that it can bring that back up. And in this case, I do photograph, in this young lady's case, into the this was for a business portrait. Obviously, she's not a high school senior. So I did photograph into the part because her hair was pretty thick and voluminous on the other side. And even though with lighting I could correct that and bring the hair away, I just thought this was a really sweet angle of her face. She wanted smiling for this particular executive portrait she had done, and so that's what I ended up doing with that. Hair, stray hairs. There's an example. Now, in that case, you can use hairspray and mom to help fix the flyaways once they're in the pose, because if you fix them out in the waiting room and they come in and sit down, they could fly away again. So you have to just say, okay, oh, it's perfect. Don't move just for a second, mom. Come on over. I'm going to have you do this, and I'll stand back. So you can see, if you go off to the side, that might disappear. So you got to stand where the camera is going to be so that you can see exactly where the light is striking and causing that. That was about a 10-second Photoshop fix. So it can be done, and a lot of photographers don't do that. I see stuff out there that I know people are investing in that has stray hairs, and to me, it has to be believable, but we also want to make sure we fix those because that's what people expect, and it puts you up to that next level.
Right on. And this is such a good one right here. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and this young man definitely expressed, he said, I'm going to get braces next year. My parents didn't want to do it this year. And he was a real fun-loving guy. He loved Batman, so we did a lot of stuff he plays computer games. So we did a lot of neat images, and we did some from the side. And I got a few where he was smiling, and the parents kept saying, well, we want him smiling. They invested heavily in the non-smiling, because they said he's such a fun-loving guy. He always laughing and stuff. But they love this portrait. Now, I will say, I don't normally let them continue to wear bracelets for causes, but in this case, this is for autism, and there was some personal reasons that in his family had been touched by that. He wanted to show those off, so I left them on in some of the portraits. But that's one thing to look for, too. When you do your analysis, if they're wearing any kind of arm jewelry that isn't appropriate for the portrait, you're going to have to take it off or figure out how to hide it with a sleeve or something.
Right on. And are they a blinker? I know, Tom. I mean, even though I've never been in the camera room while he's working, I know it's not going to be any problem at all, because you never can tell when he's actually going to take the image Oh, that's great. Turn your head a little bit to your right. Yep. And a little bit back to the, oh, I love that. Oh, eyes up here. Yeah. They don't have any idea of when we're going to expose that image. So, but yeah, we have to be very cognizant of that, as well as squinters when you're outside. Got to be really aware of that, because the eyes are the window to the soul, like Tom said, and we don't want them squinting. So we do pay a lot of attention to this stuff.
I had a high school senior this morning, sorry to interrupt, that we were outside. She wanted some outdoor portraits at a little pond nearby. It's beautiful, where her family always went and picnic, and the sun was out. So we did some gorgeous with the sun to the back with off-camera flash, but I tried to find an area where behind me, where she would be looking, was dark trees, because every time she looked up, she goes, oh my gosh, I'm squinting, my eyes hurt. So we found a spot where I still got the color I wanted in the background. The lighting was gorgeous, but as she looked up, she saw dark behind me, not a bright sky, and that could be a challenge. And I'll tell you, we did a couple. She has these great sunglasses. They're heart-shaped, real cool stuff, 60s style. I said, put your sunglasses on for a minute. The minute I did that, her mother goes, oh, I want that. So sunglasses sometimes, even though you can't see the eyes, can also be a fun way if someone's got a real bad squinting problem, they're outside, to try a few with those as well, if they're appropriate for what they're wearing.
And we've kind of talked about this before, but we're using the hand, so we have her, so she knows exactly where to look, because that makes a huge difference whether her eyes are following her nose as she's looking off to her right, or whether her face is aimed, her nose is aimed off to the right a little, but her eyes are coming back to the camera. So we're just turning the head one way or the other, motioning which way to go so they can see it without having to think about it, and then looking at my hand and then turn. Or a lot of times in the camera room, I'd say, looking right up there at that corner of the ceiling and the walls right there. And that's the perfect place, and that would tell me what I needed to know. So you're in total charge, and it only takes a few seconds, and you learn an awful lot.
Yeah, you're looking for bumps in the nose, scars, birthmarks, anything that might stand out and that might be an issue for them when they see the finished portrait. So, and again, we're not talking about removing characteristics that make them who they are. It's about minimizing the characteristics that they may be self-conscious about as much as possible, and again, doing as much in camera as we possibly can.
Right.
That's right. And not mentioning it to them, but simply seeing it, they'll be very thankful. And one other thing I'll add is sometimes if people come to a projection appointment and someone has a very visible scar or something, it's delicate sometimes, but I will, if it's a mom with a high school senior, I will privately ask, you want that retouched, or is that part of their personality? Do you want to leave that in there? And sometimes they'll say, yeah, he fell out of a tree when he was 6. He's got that thing, and that's him. That little white line is him, so leave it in. So I don't usually do any major retouching of that type until I've checked with the person who actually, hired us. I want to make sure. You have to be delicate about it, because you don't want to, sound like you're making fun of somebody. But which leads us to skin and acne. Most of the high school seniors that I photograph, of course, all have acne at some point in their teen years. And in this case, he had both a crooked smile and acne, and his mom had said to me, his smiles are always crooked. His right lip always hangs down. And so as we went through, I knew this, anticipated this, and so I chose this example because we do in the design consultation, and when we talk about preparing for their portraits, talk about the benefits for guys as well as ladies, cover stick and makeup. Nothing that's apparent, but something, the more that they do beforehand, it will psychologically make their subject feel better. So if he sits down and he has far less acne showing, even in the unretouched image, he's going to feel better. And also, when they see that at the projection appointment, it's easier to pre-visualize what it will look like. However, I left this example because I thought it was a pretty good example of what most people probably know if you're in the business. A little bit of retouching can go a long way. Your lab can do that for you if you're not able to do it, so don't waste a lot of time, because they don't pay you a lot to retouch the images. They pay you to actually create the images. This elderly gentleman, part of a family group that was one of the biggest investments I had last year. It was a big family group. They had a dog. It was and when we did all the breakdowns, and we had lost the grandmother, so it was just grandfather himself. It was a very emotional session, and they just loved and cherished him. So I said, well, you look so handsome. Said, oh, you don't want anything of me, and so we sat him down. But don't over retouch and take the character out of those faces. It's important.
Right.
This young lady, I'll go on just because I know the story behind this one. This young lady expressed that she didn't like her nose. The bottom of my nose is kind of big, blah, blah, blah. She told me some different things. Well, one of the ways to correct that is from a little higher angle. So you're not photographing up the nose into the nostrils. So I have a little stool, and the way I posed her on her posing, so she's a little lower angle to me. And I use a little fan for a little wind machine to give her a little model appearance. But the angle of the nose, as you can see there, can really make a difference. Also, a little almost a two-thirds view there, short lighting, to slim down the face a little bit, which is what a request she had.
All right, nice. Now we're looking for the double chin, the neckline, an area that can be very sensitive to a lot of people. Dad, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I have a real thing about understanding people who are nervous about the possible double chin. They don't have to tell me, because I'm going to be looking for it, and I know that's part of my job. And one of the best ways to get rid of if they do have a double chin, where if their head is down like this, it's a little double under there, is just raise your camera up and then raise their chin up, so that you're still photographing squarely to the plane of the face, but you don't notice the chin. You just don't. It's by raising their chin a little bit that completely removes that double chin area.
Yeah, I tell people if they ask about that, I'm like, we were doing the selfie angle before there were selfies, because I call that, so many people that do selfies take that camera and they go, wow, do I look good from up there, the bird's eye view. And it's partly because they're taking this and stretching it out, and also perspective can be slimming as well. So raising your camera can kind of have double duty there. Get rid of this without having to do a bunch of Photoshop work, which can look fake. Just changing up a few inches until you say, okay, that's the angle that I want to work with. So I'm always prepared to do that, especially if it's an adult and they have expressed that. That can really make a difference. Also, if someone is, as we call, follically challenged, or in this case, the gentleman down in the lower left corner had a great story. He actually was in a very bad accident when he was a teenager. He was in a road race with his bicycle, lost a leg, went through rehab, didn't like quite the way the process went, and built a multi-million-dollar company based on prosthetics and how he overcame his hurdles. A great story. He had me in tears. Just one of those people. He left, and I hugged him, and I was like, I don't want this guy to leave. I want to be his friend. And so he says, I had a little bit of the Caesar's ring left. I shaved it off, and I think I said, you are so handsome, And so he really, the biggest key for me is we try to de-emphasize shine. Don't usually use a hair light, but he was so proud of that he wasn't concerned about that. But usually if it's someone that, we used to also use gobos or gaffs, these things that go down in front of the main light to kind of take the head from the forehead up and darken it by an f-stop or two, just so that the mask of the face is the brightest, and the top, the area that's missing hair, is just a few little shades darker, so your eye doesn't go to that. Because as Chuck mentioned, light proceeds, dark recedes, so that darker area is less important. The mask of the face, which is the important thing, counts.
Yeah. And I do want to comment on that lower right-hand photograph of the girl like this.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what to do, okay, to make someone help someone look better.
And we'll see that closer up in a moment. So.
Oh, will we?
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
Because this covers everything up. It covers up your double chin. It covers up your shoulders. It takes weight off of people. This is an amazing one, but I don't like straight on very often. Most of the time I like this, and then this comes back, so it's still a 2/3 view. But boy, this is a big seller.
Yeah, gentlemen, keep your eyes on the time. We are running a bit long here, so let's keep going. Look at the shape of the face. Tom.
Yeah, we talked about that oval shape. Some people have heart shape, squares. It's a good little study in shape of faces where, again, to get that oval, we might, through 2/3 and short lighting, other techniques, create that slimmer face, that more oval face. But while you're doing your facial analysis, you're looking what shape this face is. Is it very thin? They have a wide forehead, a high forehead, a long chin, whatever the shape is created by those features, that's what you're going to have to work with, and that's when you start doing your mental notes. Okay, this is how I will pose and light this person.
Yes, lens. The lens height can make such a huge difference. We talked about that already a little bit ago. But sometimes they look so much better if you go up a little bit higher and then raise their chin up, and so you're still square to their face, the plane of the face.
Yeah, one of the things that you're looking at when someone smiles is, do they have that little crinkle in the nose? Or do they have a particular thing that happens to their face when they are smiling? And also with the neckline, that's very common. A lot of women that are asked that are in business executive portraits or in family groups will say, I've got this line in my neck, and camera height, as we talked about, can help that too, but there's also some other compromises you might make sometimes. If you went too high, you lose some of the other things that you're working for. So in this case, I was just kind of showing that you can, with gentle retouching, not to remove character, you can actually make sure that their double chin potential is gone, but also any necklines can be retouched out past that. So don't go too high trying to correct for that. I just had mentioned this gentleman, and I just minimize. He's still got a little bit of that shine for depth, those kicker lights that come in for the side, hair lights, but it is toned down a bit just so that we're not totally focused on the, that area of his head. We're looking more at his face and his expression and his smile, which he really liked. There's another example of camera height and the wider face shape. She has more of, I don't know if I call it a square or a heart, but with a little higher camera angle and that shorter lighting the further side of her face. This is not quite a true 2/3 view. That's more like a 7/8 view, if you want to get into fractions. But as you can see, it's the same subject, same day, but it makes a dramatic difference with the angle and the lighting. Really makes a big difference. And she was amazed. The girl had asked me to do this, and she was amazed at what difference it made. And there's no Photoshop needed there. It was all done in camera.
You just answered my question. I was going to ask. So literally all done in camera. Look at the difference. Look at the massive difference through combination of angle of the face, the lighting choice, just incredible. And bringing the eyes back to the camera, all of that works so incredibly well. All right. So wrapping up here, some final thoughts on the importance of everything that you got from today's program. First off, take one small step right now to implement what you discovered here. Again, don't leave this video and say, I'm done. I now know facial analysis. You'll forget it. So immediately take some notes, rewatch this, make a checklist, not to use in front of the client. No. But to review before you go there, before you go in front of the client and know exactly what to do. Take that next baby step right now. Remember, successful photographers like you, take action and do the things that the failures don't do. They think differently, and I want to encourage you to think differently. Today gave you a way to think differently about facial analysis and every step that goes into that. And continue to take advice from those who are where you want to be. Hopefully that includes us, both from a photographic standpoint and also a profitability in your photography business standpoint. And then remember to visit the Photographer's Online Vault regularly. We're adding new stuff all the time to the Online Vault, just like this video and the other video that we're adding this month as well. So be sure you're visiting that frequently and email us with any questions you have. You have access to us, so you can email us. There's a spot on the Online Vault where you can find the email address. I think it's in the frequently asked questions on the right side of the screen. And send us an email if you have any questions at all. All right, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you first for any last minute words about what we talked about today. And then, Dad, you can have the final word.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. If you dream of clients who love you, who respect you, who will invest in your photography and cherish it for years, facial analysis is one of the best steps you could take. It tells people that you listen to them, that you care about them. You're not just snapping a picture, but you're actually creating an image they'll love. And you can't do that without several steps, including the design consultation and facial analysis. And it's fun. I guarantee if you get good at this, you'll do this everywhere you go, and you won't tell them you're doing it, but you think, I'd photograph that person. Even the waitress comes over, you're like, well, she'd look good in short light with the backlight on her hair. It's really fun. So have fun with this, but make sure you do this.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was going to say too, Tom, was just make sure you do this. Start doing this now, because nobody else is doing this, hardly anybody. And it's such a crucial part of fine portrait photography. Great talking with you today. We'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.